Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, one of the most valuable hours of your day. I'm Michael, the MCCC for today's adventure, and this week we continue Tim Flynn's self-discovery course, a week dedicated to practice. Today's show, are your plans authentically aligned? It is Thursday, so well, actually, today we're going to do the logical fallacy first. But before we do that, let's introduce my co-host. First, Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator. Willow, our trauma consultant.
Hi, everyone. Sorry for the bad audio. I'm on headphones today.
And Dennis, our freedom facilitator. How you doing, Dennis?
Hi, everybody. Glad to be with you.
Just a reminder, if you're viewing live and you have a question or comment, feel free to throw that out there for us. We'll try and address them. But we're going to start off with our logical fallacy for the week. And this kind of ties into the practice of practice that we're trying to visit this week. And so let's talk about our logical fallacy of the week. Let's kick it off there. Well, I actually, right off the bat, I was just, somebody sent me a thing that said something like 85% of your financial results are a result of your personality, your ability to communicate and negotiate and lead versus 15% technical skills. So, like in a lot of cases, a lot of people spend a lot of time working on their technical skills, and that's not what really matters the most.
Hmm. We're talking about
No,
emotions.
I agree with you. I just can't, like, my mind is still wrapping itself around that idea. And so I can't process. I'm processing it.
Hmm.
No, well, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Deirdre just said that she can't hear Agnieszka. Can you hear us? No, I
Well,
was meaning
Dennis,
can
you had
okay, yeah.
something. You had something to say. Why don't you go ahead and respond while?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, what came to my mind, and that relates to emotions also, and it relates to the beaver thing, to the fallacy with the beaver, which is oftentimes, I used to realize it myself, but now, like working with clients, what I often come across is that, oh, he made me feel angry, or she made me feel upset, which I think is a good example for correlating two things that actually, if you really look at it, don't really have anything to do with each other. It's just because we make them come together. But if you take self responsibility for yourself and for your own emotions, then you are actually in control of your emotions, of how you feel. And unless you let somebody pack you, then nobody else really is supposed to have the power to make you upset, or to make you fearful, or to make you angry, or to make you anything. That can only happen if you open the door, so to say, for somebody else to, if you give if you give somebody else the power to influence you in that way. And that came to my mind when Agnieszka was talking about emotions, and about the fallacy with the beaver, because it's if you think about just anybody you might not know, or that might not have any importance, so to say, in your life, and you would not give him the power to make you feel sad, to make you feel angry. So it wouldn't, or if somebody says a curse word on the road and you've never seen him before, you just turn your back and you walk away, and then you won't remember it after 5 minutes. But then, if maybe your mommy or your daddy criticizes you or does something, and then sometimes some people that have are close to us, they have, of course, we give them more influence, and we sometimes forget that we have to stand in our power, and we have the ability to to realize and to recognize what they're saying or what they mean, but we don't have to give away the our our sanity or the control of our emotional state in that moment to them. So that's what came to my mind with the when we were talking about the beaver thing.
So you guys, we have to go back to the beaver thing, because my microphone wasn't working and I didn't notice, and it wasn't doing its thing here. So now I have to go back to the beaver thing and say that whole paragraph again that I said, and then we can go back to this. Because ladies out there on the internet, you can hear me now, right? Right? Please say yes. Somebody say yes. No, I'm pretty sure they can, because my microphone is doing the thing now. So I didn't realize that wasn't working. Sorry about that. So let's go back to the fallacy picture. So this is our fallacy for the week. And this is a fallacy that's called not a cause for a cause. So what's happening in this picture there is Mr. Beaver wants to go up, or every morning Mr. Beaver goes up the mountain in order for the sun to go up.
Hey, Agnieszka.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Deirdre just keeps telling me stop, please stop.
What?
I think our audio is the lag. I think there's some lag, and she's like, please, it's really, really bad in all caps. I'm gonna have to screenshot this. I was like, I can't. I'm trying to.
No, hang on, because I just heard from Robbie and Kelly that my audio is fine now. And so, is there an echo and a lag? Should we restart this thing?
She says echo, bad lag, bad echo.
All right. Let's reboot this whole business and we'll start over.
Okay.
All right.
Well, are we getting conflicting signals? Is it possible it could be on her end though?
Maybe. Oh,
is anybody else hearing lag and
we're kind of dependent on feedback from our audience. It depends on if our audience likes this.
Well, last time we asked a question, they answered right away. I do want to talk about the beaver. I do want to talk about Mr. Beaver going up the hill, but I don't want to talk about it if it sounds like stuff. I'm not getting any other feedback other than from Deirdre, so maybe we should quickly reboot the show. Make sure that it's not. Oh no! Oh, Kelly said sounds great. So do we do?
Okay.
What do we do? Do we continue?
I say we push forward.
Push forward.
Let's hear from the beaver.
Nabuj! Oh, that's a Polish. To the battle. Anyway. All right. So let's go back to Mr. Beaver. All right. So sorry for folks for reciting this 3 times. Mr. Beaver goes up the hill every morning. He thinks that because he goes up the hill without before the sun goes up as a result of his actions, as opposed to the sun going up anyway. Because Mr. Beaver never skips a day, he can fallaciously correlate, or he can correlate his going up the mountain with the sun rising. And that's a fallacy because it's not related. And how many times in our lives do we do that? And what I was like talking with my hands, I'm going to put myself back on the screen. Earlier when I was talking with my hands up and I was telling, go this way or that way, what I was saying is often when we practice, this week is all about practice. So often when we practice, we can practice things that don't serve us by aligning with the wrong emotion, because the emotions are what leads you in life. And that might sound like a fallacy to you, but it really isn't. So I'm going to explain. For example, you have 2 choices. Generally, you have 2 choices. It's either love or fear. Love has all sorts of friends, and fear has all sorts of friends. Like, fear would have friends, apprehension, anger, resentment. Those are all friends of fear. And then love has friends like being good, being cordial to people, all those friends of love, right? So say you affiliate yourself, and that, I mean, really wallow in fear. Like I had this bad week this week. I could really wallow in fear or in anger or wherever. I could really focus on that and make that my whole world. But what I would be doing then is missing opportunities that are on this side, on the love side of the equation. So I would be avoiding people. I would be staying at home. I would be hiding my head under a pillow, not necessarily literally, but perhaps figuratively. And having fear in your mind may affect your decisions, business decisions, affects your purchasing decisions, like what groceries you buy. So there are all sorts of things that could go awry if you align yourself with the wrong emotion, right? Courage versus resentment, fear versus love, anger versus benevolence.
I think you've just discovered the why the economy is tanking. on a whole, is because our society is all engrossed in fear and essentially telescoping and manifesting not good things.
And that's why I was sharing that brilliant, and I will have to share with our followers too, that brilliant talk from Suze Casey. I know I shared it in my personal, but I'll share it on Facebook, on our Facebook page. We do more stuff on the Facebook page. I know people hate Facebook, but sometimes we share like additional links on Facebook and stuff. But my friend was saying that if you align yourself with fear, everything will go down. Your health will go down. Your ability to observe will go down. All sorts of things go down if you're swimming in that fear soup. So, did I kill the conversation?
Well, yesterday we kind of covered each of our activities this week. Dennis wasn't there. Let's visit with Dennis here a little bit. What was your practice for the week, Dennis, and how did it go for you?
Mm-hmm. My practice for the week was to prepare a product really that I have been working on and off for quite some while, and it is like one within a list of things to do, and I chose to focus on that really and make it my goal and make it my practice goal for this week, and I guess in a way for the weeks to come, because I think it incorporates many of the aspects of what I feel the time is now for me to do. And so I did pretty all right, because the goal was to define it properly to put it in the proper words and to have like a proper outline of what I really want. So I haven't figured out 100% of the details as yet, but I'm glad to say that yeah, that have an outline there. And also what came up, what became an important point is communication. So the ability of communicating that project, it stood out to me that this is really an important part of practice, that and of planning as well, to be able to communicate those plans to others, to other people who might actually contribute to it. And for me, maybe one of the challenges, or something I was reminded about, is that I like to do things by myself, or as much as possible by myself, because then I have, in a way, control. And like, if I screw up, then I screwed up, but I would not, I feel that I don't have to depend on too many other people. But then of course that is something limiting as well, because you can get ideas, you can get input, and you can go to places like that you could not see before, when interacting with others. So I'm glad that this was something that was pointed out to me. And so the focus from now on will be, to interact with other people that have competence and that have great ideas and abilities, that already have influenced me and have like widened the scope of even that little project that I'm working on. So those were some of the pointers and some of the teachings of the last few days.
Yeah, and this week
You,
is practice, right? Next week is accountability. So we'll continue a deeper cut of what we're doing this week for each of our individual journeys next week. I'm already scared.
one of the things you mentioned there was limiting beliefs, and that kind of sounds similar to the fallacy. That a lot of the times that what we're practicing in regard to our own beliefs and our faith in who we think we are, like what you were just saying, Dennis, in regard to, well, I just do it on my own because it allows me more control. But the reality is that, does that really work, or is there a better way, and how to incorporate that into altering? And the other question I'd have, Dennis, in regard to what you said, was there a moment that it kind of like you put the practice into play and you felt something positive from doing that?
Yeah, definitely. It was actually a relief to sit down and just focus on that, because like, in the back of my mind, because I have so many ideas, and like, in the back of my mind, it's always says like, oh, you should have been doing this and you should have been working on that. So when I actually sit down and focus on one of them, it's like, yeah, this is what I should be doing. And like, I feel productive. So when I put things into practice, like, I very easily, actually, I get into a flow. The same like with journaling and with those other things that I know I want to do, and I feel like I should be doing. So if I physically sit down and do it, then it feels, there's a relief. And that's really an interesting experience, because then things will start to flow, and then new ideas will come in, and then just like with what I described a while ago, then other people's input will come in, and then just things just feel to flow. So it's really, and then sometimes I will realize, oh, I've been working on this for a day or two, or a few hours, or whatever it is, and it's like, oh wow, I have to rewrite everything again. But then when I'm in the flow, and while I'm doing the action, it doesn't feel bad. It's like, it feels like a progression. So it's like, it's not like, oh my god, like all this work was for nothing, but it's like, oh no, I did that work and I reached this point where I recognize that I can do it better, or if I
Yeah,
look at it from
but
that perspective, it's better.
is it okay? So we go from consumption to production, right? For a certain amount of our lives, we consume knowledge, and then eventually now we're producing it, we're sharing it with the world through this podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go from consumption to production, and then you overthink, well, how am I going to do production? So then maybe you get stuck in preparation. You're no longer stuck in consumption. You're now stuck in preparation, but it's still not production. Well, this is raising excellence is production. And that's why I wanted to do it 3 times a week, like nobody else did. Still people are like, why do you guys do it 3 times a week? Isn't that really hard? Yeah, it's really hard. That's why we do it 3 times a week. If it was easy, you wouldn't teach us shit.
Yeah, and the fact is really the thing is to just go out and do it, and then learn while doing and grow while actually doing it.
Well,
And
look
I
how much
think
we've
that's
grown in the last like 10 weeks that we've been doing this podcast. 3 times a week, every week, no fail so far.
yeah,
You
it
know?
is a great example for practice. It's very fitting.
Yeah, we succeeded. You guys, why are we doing this week? We should skip really to accountability. What do we need to practice? By the way, I'm writing a list of the things I want to put in the description after we close the show. I'm going to go back in YouTube and Facebook and whatever, put like links in the description. The Suze Casey link. I'm going to put a song especially for Dennis in there too, about somebody who sings about I should have been doing this when I'm doing this. It's a cool song.
And really and truly, there is no should, would, and could. So it's not reality.
So you're really shitting on yourself when you should.
So sometimes it's easier to point it out and to see it in other people when they're like in the should, would, could world, and harder to see it in ourselves. But then I'm grateful for every opportunity when I can actually I'm there right now. So
but
let's cut through that.
This show, this podcast is practice, because when I'm having a bad day and I don't want to be on camera and I don't want to be here, like what the hell? And I feel like I squeeze myself through an opening that's too small, and I come out on the other side and I say, okay, no, I'm going to be here. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to be at the podcast. So what? It's 3 times a week. I get so much out of it. I get such benefits from doing this. Like if nobody ever heard us, we still get a huge benefit just from practicing this. And
that's when you really know that something is aligned authentically, right? Because if it's aligned to who you really are and what is authentic, what feels authentic to you, then you get that immediate positive feedback, and you get that that great feeling, even if you have to overcome like a hurdle. But once you're in the flow, then things flow and you're in the right place.
I wish that our listeners had little stars they could press every time we say something from the title of the show. Just ding, ding. That way we would know if we're on track. You just did. You just said 2 words from the title right there. Okay, so are your plans authentically aligned? How would you know? How would one know if your plans, like, are you Mr. Beaver, or are your plans actually aligned? We've all been Mr. Beaver at one point.
What are the pointers? How is it for you? Like, when do you know that you're on track, that you're in the flow?
I'll tell you a little of something that happens to me when I absolutely know I'm in the right place, and that is simply when things just happen that kind of fit into place, and I really made no effort whatsoever. Either I explain to somebody and somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, I got this for that." And it's like, "Oh, great! It's a problem I didn't even know I had yet, and there's already a solution." And the more times I see that, and I've experienced this throughout my career, when everything is running really smoothly, synchronicity happens. All kinds of things going on that just seem to all kind of fit together, and it's like, everything is just in its place, and harmony is
That's what I say about that river. Remember that river of life that I sometimes talk about, where you can float down the middle of the river of life, or you can try to be on the shore and grab onto the branches. When everything is easy, you're in the middle of the river. You don't have to put any effort into floating down the river. You're just sitting there and life is taking you. And I think I personally associated with a feeling inside somewhere in my belly, chest area. There's a feeling of flow, but I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah. I think the effortlessness is what it describes.
Breezy,
how is
yeah.
it for you? Mm-hmm.
I also relate it to a feeling, but it's not like a flow. I only know how to relate it to something that I already know what it feels like. So to me, it's like an emotional feeling. But have you ever been craving something to eat, and then you get that food, and all of a sudden you're just like, yeah, that hit the spot. That was exactly what I needed. And you just like, I don't know, feel content. Like you're like, okay, everything's good. That's exactly what my body was wanting, needed, and now I can go and focus on something else. It's almost like a balance So instead of a flow, it's a balance, I guess.
What was interesting to me is like even Monday I was mentioning it that when journaling, like the whole effortlessness like came to mind. So it's funny that we start talking about that again, because that's really where it lies for me too. Is like when I focus on it, and it's like, oh, which are the things that came into my life that really that came without any effort. I didn't have to like struggle for it. And it's funny because many of the things like others would look at it and say, oh my god, you work so hard for it, and so, but it didn't feel like I worked hard for it. Like I physically might have worked hard for it, but it didn't feel like it was a strain. So the whole effortlessness is like, it doesn't mean that you did not do anything for it, but the things that you did for it, or let's say the physical work that you did for it, it didn't feel like a strain, but it felt like even something uplifting. It felt like it was flowing. So that's a feeling it was very interesting to just bring your awareness to what came to your life, and without you having to make any effort or any strain. And that was a really interesting exercise for me the other day.
Yeah. My mom just said to me this morning, she's like, oh, you have a podcast again? How many times a week do you guys do that? And I'm like, 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. And she's like, wow, that's a lot of podcasts. But it's not. In a way, the podcast is kind of anchoring me. So I have to be at a certain space in a specific time on a specific day. And as a freelancer, it's giving me the route, right? I can plan things around it, but because it's there as an anchor, as an anchor, I guess. The Polish word for anchor came to mind. It grounds me in a way, in a week. Does that make sense?
It's a practice in itself. Yeah, I started doing that with D&D, and then we started the podcast, and then I had to juggle those two things, and then I added jiu-jitsu in. But yeah, I get that. I get asked that all the time because I consider myself a pretty not lazy person, but I like to lay around the house and binge watch Netflix and eat a whole tub of ice cream. I'm that girl. I love to eat and just lay on the couch.
You're a Sagittarius. You can't help it.
Yeah, but I also like Dennis was saying, the things that I want to put effort into and that I put effort into, it doesn't feel like I'm overspending on my effort. It fits in nicely, and like I might have some bumps, but overall the ride is kind of smooth. Not like smooth, but it's passable.
And I think Sagittarius is like myself and you. We have that overfocus. We either overfocus or we underfocus. We're either binging Netflix or we're doing something 3 times as fast as everybody else. I don't know. Maybe that's only true for me. But like when I overfocus, I like obsess about a subject for days. And then at the end of the week, I know everything there is to know about it.
Yeah. And then you don't want to touch it for like another
month,
year or so.
Oh yeah. Mike wanted something. What did you want, Michael?
I did want to mention that those actually do sound like they could potentially be limiting beliefs that you may want to examine, because if the things, I mean, I always do this myself when I do it a lot, where I say, well, I'm like this and I do this or that.
Are you like this, or are you choosing to be like this?
Is that really it, or is that just what we kind of,
or is that a cop-out?
Our comfort zone.
I think it depends on whether you're using it as a well, this is the reason behind my behavior and I am justifying it, versus saying I have a tendency to do this. This is a trait that I have. This is something that I do.
That's mitigated.
From that point, yeah, because a lot of people add a judgment at that point. You have to say, this is what I do. Okay, how do I feel about that now? It's 2 separate steps. 2.
Well, no, wait.
Can't mix them into one.
If we go back by like 6 weeks, we would have to go, okay, so this is what I do. Is it aligned with my values? Am I spending time according to how this is like the weeks, right? All the self-discovery course.
Even before you get into what you want to do about it, you have to decide, you have to realize what you do. That's the identifying. And then you have to say, am I okay with that? Because there's some people who are like, okay, I'm fine with the amount of Netflix that I watch, or I'm fine with the amount of sugar that I eat. And they say, okay, you're good. You don't want to change that. But if you don't feel good about something and you want to change it, that's when you start the, okay, what is, what are your values? Are your values aligned with what you do? You already know what you do, so you can answer that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but I mean, that's one of those things where, like if you're eating sugar and although you don't realize it's doing something bad for you, it actually is. And then at that point that you realize, oh, that's not good for me, then then that's the opportunity to change.
And I'm at
And
that
that's
point right now.
where other people, like a lot of those times, a lot of things are, we don't see them for ourselves, but that's when, like having trusted friends really comes into play, because they're the ones that we understand truly care about us, and when we do meaningfully communicate with them and they suggest something, that's an opportunity to see. The more that I read about the trauma, the traumas that we all have to deal with, the more I see how much, how little we actually see, how little we're actually conscious of when it comes to our actions throughout the day. And this is certainly one of the things when it comes to practice. It is changing things from the unconscious to the conscious choice. What we do unconsciously, is that really the right thing to do? Examining that and saying, I've made a conscious choice. This is what I'm going to do. And
So
then
you
it can
said,
go back to being a unconscious or subconscious routine. But at least now you've made a conscious filter of making a choice about where that lies consciously.
I
we
went through
basically
I think
this.
it's self-parenting. It's all about self-parenting. Go ahead.
Could be
so
that
we
way.
basically have to it our authentically aligned plans have to be rooted in recognizing that wherever we are right now or whatever we're doing right now is actually not aligned with who we truly are, with where we want to reach. So first we have to recognize, oh, something is off, the sugar, the workout, or whatever it is, the relationship. So the awareness of that we are in a place where we don't want to be, or where we kind of off track, or where we're not online, has comes first. And then basically the recognition of that we are in a spot where we don't want to be, but we want to be somewhere else. So we set our goals, and then in order to achieve those goals, we make plans that we then ideally align to where we want to go and who we really want to be.
It doesn't have to be that drastic though. So this week I had some personal life upsets, right? And I really employed the self-parenting. So my initial reaction was to eat a tub of ice cream, right? Oh, I'm upset. I'm going to eat a tub of ice cream. I'm like, no, because ice cream, sugar is not, I don't know, I'm not addressing sugar at this time in my life. I'm still eating sugar. I'm not eating sugar a lot, but I'm still eating sugar. Sugar is not going to give me what I want. And that's why I had stir-fried some spinach with some beans and threw some eggs in there. It was like high protein, a little bit of fat. And it's the fat that makes you feel better. But the sugar will give you crash. So knowing that as a good parent to Agnieszka, I made sure that she had the high protein snack. And if she still wants ice cream, she can have that later. But you know what I mean? Like, so it's a choice, but it's an informed choice, and it's a choice that really has your highest good at hand, not an emotional choice, an anti-choice. They want me to do this, so I'll do this. That's not a choice. That's
See,
slavery.
I really struggle with this part, especially the sugar, because I know what it does. And part of me is like, okay, I'm okay with it in my coffee in the morning because I really like my coffee with sugar. I'm not willing to just change that right now. It probably does need to be changed, but it is what it is. But the biggest part is knowing that I am very, very good at being sleep deprived. I've been doing it for 29 years now. I'd say an expert at just functioning at a very high level of sleep deprivation. So I know that if I am having a sleep attack a half an hour before I actually want to go to bed, I can eat or drink something sugary and wait for it to crash, and then I'll go to sleep, and I'll probably get shit sleep, but hey, what's new? It's kind of the situation that I get in sometimes.
I'm not sure that's good self-parenting there, honey.
It's not at all. And I'm really that's a practice that I've actually been trying. It's not one that I committed to, but it's one that I have been trying to adjust, especially with alcohol, because alcohol processes the same as sugar, and it's also a really good numbing agent. So I actually used to self-medicate a lot with alcohol to sleep. But yeah, just knowing, like, I guess that's kind of why drinking at this age, where I'm like, it feels weird. I feel weird getting like really bad hangovers and being kind of picky, or just being like, I don't really want to drink tonight, because it's a very strange period of time for me.
Well, and I mean, and also being really, really selective. Like, for example, I like a good dessert, but I'm not gonna, I've made a decision about 2 or 3 years ago that I'm not gonna have any dessert that doesn't give me the pleasure. Because, okay, there's sugar in this dessert, right? So it's not that good for me. So if I eat a Twinkie, that's a zero pleasure experience, because it's not that good. It's not really gonna give me a million bars of pleasure. And I'm just going to be eating some shit that's going to be stuck in my body, and then chemicals, and I don't know. But if I'm eating something like amazing, some fudge that was made by a chocolatier, with this one chocolate being like super, super rich, but also, quality, healthy, raw, whatever. I can be on board with that. I can eat the sugar when it's something that's worth the sugar hit. Not something that, shit. But transitioning, right? Gradual.
But there is also that indicate, like, sugar, for example, is very addictive. So that's a particular behavior that's actually got kind of another emotional or kind of cue that hits your body in a way that creates that kind of addictive behavior. And so certainly being aware of that. Go ahead.
I was going to say, on that note, cigarettes, the cigarette papers are dipped in sugar water to make the experience more pleasurable. And yeah, that's definitely a thing. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, but there's also all these other things. And because the addiction model is such a part of consumerism, practically everything that we consume these days has this kind of addictive component to it that drives a lot of people's behaviors in a lot of different directions, from Facebook with the social media to the videos and the television and the movies and everything. They're giving you like these addictive rewards that essentially kind of hooks you in. And then to some degree, these are things that people tell themselves about themselves, like that's part of them. But the reality is it's actually more than likely part of the scheme to get them just to keep consuming. And so that's certainly something to be considered when it comes to that. But I would also point out that, like, when we're doing something as a behavior, like even if you're trying to become more physically fit, and maybe it's your diet or maybe it's the routine that you're engaging in that you think is making you stronger, but it's actually not. Or maybe it's...
We're back to Mr. Beaver now.
Yeah, exactly. So how do we know that? How do we get to know that?
I'm not sure if this answers that question, but it did make me think of a phrase called trauma bonding. And you can do it with music a lot, where you just like go back to that feeling. I just think it starts with recognizing. You have to recognize how you're feeling at this moment, and then you can trace that back to, I felt that at this moment years ago, and this is the lesson I learned. And you need to decide again, reanalyze that lesson, and see if that lesson actually, if the conclusion that you came to was correct or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe some metrics.
Okay, so hang on.
To measure.
Let's do a recap. So how do you know that your plans are authentically aligned? Let's do a list. Number 1. I'm waiting. Number 1. You have a good feeling in your belly. It feels smooth and flowy and like you've just eaten a cookie that you were craving. So that's one, right? How else would you know that your plans are authentically aligned?
Synchronicity, my synchronicity thing.
The,
Other
Things are
things that
lining up,
happen,
effortlessness.
yeah.
kind of aligning in.
The
Um,
effortlessness also. If it
Yeah.
feels effortless
I would
in the
say
flow.
at some point it's similar to like unlocking doors. If you have a key and you're in the wrong area, you're constantly just jamming a key into a door that doesn't work.
Okay, but there is
Eventually you're going to see progress. You're going to have some sort of unlocking. Even if you're seeking out, you're going to get some sort of help. I don't know if that's the same thing as like synchronicity.
seek and you shall receive. Yeah, but there's one more thing. There's the chop wood, carry water. So no matter what you choose, no matter what your dream career or dream experiences, there's always the chop wood, carry water element. Those are the things that you may not want to do, or that are not as pleasant, or that are not as rewarding, but you might still have to do those things in order to further your big dream. So that's
See,
not.
I always thought.
So there is a difference
always
between. Yeah, go ahead.
I thought chop wood and carry water was like the basic functions. Like there's always stuff that you're gonna have to handle. A lot of that has
The stuff that you don't want to do, but
and-
you have to do it.
yeah, the things that are necessary. So
Right.
okay, that makes
But
sense.
even in a great business, there's still all like some aspect that you may not enjoy as much as other aspects, right? So you still have to do that. And that does not mean that you're climbing a mountain for no reason. It just means that there are some some uncomfortable things that we might have to do in order to further the things that we love. Like as an artist, if I paint a painting, I may not enjoy washing my brushes. But if I don't wash my brushes, I have to buy new ones every time I paint, and that's not really conducive to success. Right? So in everything,
I think
there is an element
eventually,
like that.
eventually though, this kind of goes back to what Mike was saying. I'm not sure how to tie it in. My brain is not working the best.
Good part.
But I will soon. But it's so our brains are built to serotonin, or I'm not sure if that's the only happy chemical in the brain. Dopamine in general is released in the body to let us know that this is something good. It releases when you hug people. It releases when you walk into a room and someone smiles at you.
Yeah, so there's serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin. And I'm not sure which one's released when and how, but they're all the happy hormones that are released.
Well, no, oxytocin is released moments after a natural birth in both the baby and the mother.
Yeah, but oxytocin is what makes you fall in love with people. Like when you fall in love with somebody, that fuzzy-headed.
It's also it is a natural opioid. So it's like morphine. It makes you really euphoric and really happy, and it helps with the bonding experience. And it's also the same chemical that you get when you pet your animals. So our brains and our bodies are built to live off of this serotonin release. And if you have
you just switched your
sugar,
hormones.
yeah. So it takes a while. It's not always a painful experience. Eventually, rinsing out your brushes isn't even. It's effortless. That explains why you're on the what y'all were saying makes a lot more sense to me, because after a while, yeah, it does feel effortless. It's like you've built up muscle and it's not as hard anymore.
Well, it's like with Raising Excellence at the beginning, it was so hard for us to remember all the things. And even though we could occasionally forget one of the things on the huge checklist that we have to start the podcast, it's actually not so difficult anymore. Except for my microphone didn't work today, so I'll add that to the checklist. Double check the gauge. Just because they can hear you doesn't mean they can hear you.
I think
I wanted to add another perspective, because the theme is actually a question, right? Are your plans authentically aligned? So I will answer the question for myself, of course, because I can't talk for anybody else. I say yes, and they are always really. So if we would rephrase,
how do you know?
Well, if you would rephrase that question and you would say, are your plans helping you to on your journey to self-realization, to self-discovery, to finding out who you really are, which is, what this is all about, I would argue.
But
So are your
everything
plans doing that?
does.
So yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. So whether you think it does or whether you think it doesn't, it always is. It is aligned with that plan that is there. Going back to the if you want to make God laugh, tell him about your plans. So whether you think you are aligned or whether you think you are not, but really and truly you're acting in the position where you are right now, which is the culmination of all your life's experiences, of all the moments that you had before. You're in this moment and you're making a decision, you're making a plan from where you are right now in life. So whether you label it as good or bad, as aligned or not aligned, it doesn't really matter, because it's really the the one that you are right now and where you are in life right now, that's what leads you to make a certain decision. So whatever that decision is, it actually, it will help you to develop, it will help you to cut through eventually, whether it will make you encounter adversity, or whether it will make you it will give you like a feeling of flow, but you are further unveiling, you're further developing and progressing on your journey, no matter
Yeah.
what. And it's just for sometimes you
So we're
can
always
take a
authentically
shortcut, or you can
aligned.
take the
So that's a mind fuck, because if I'm always authentically aligned, even when I'm pissed off, then even when I'm eating sugar,
No.
I might as well just
I
eat
think-
sugar all the time.
I think being
So how does that make
aligned
you feel?
is something different from being authentically aligned. Like, I recognize this from a trauma survivor standpoint, where it took me a while to realize that I was living in survival mode, and then all of a sudden a lot of things made sense, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's why I do that. That's why I do this. And I realized that I wasn't acting irrationally. I was acting in line with what my brain and my body were telling me. I just was in denial about it, and I didn't want to hear it, so I shut those parts in a closet somewhere and locked the door.
And
So you
then
basically you were in alignment with
And then
who you were
and
at that
then
moment.
eventually I had to go back. Yeah. Agnieszka asked, and then I said, and then I had to walk back in shame and unlock the door and deal with the monster that was inside.
So that experience of being out of alignment, as you said right now, led you to the recognition that something is not how I wanted it to be. So you
Yeah.
had to go back and change something, and then that made you progress to the next stage, so to say.
Yeah, something my husband says. I'm not sure I quite agree with the way it's stated, but the meaning behind it is correct, I believe. He says that there are no contradictions in nature. I don't necessarily believe that, because I myself feel like a walking contradiction. But in reality, when I'm being truly honest with myself and I'm being authentic, I realize that it's usually just a lie or a misunderstanding that I have incorporated into my map of reality that is causing what's going on. So having a contradiction where having any contradiction in my thought or my behavior and my actions is automatically a red flag that something is off. That's something that needs a little more analysis, and there's a incorrect assumption somewhere.
So the thought, the behavior, and the action, I would argue, is in the end the same, because the actions that you take, they are initiated by your thoughts. So I think one could argue that that's actually the same thing. So if you're rooted and if you fully identified with that, then that's, and you mentioned mind. So that's where the mind comes in, and where we actually out of alignment then, because we are not the mind alone. We are it as well, but if we only focus on the mind, and if we let the mind take over, and we forget that there's more than just the mind, then that's where we go astray.
Actually, I want to tell you guys something about thoughts. You have to be careful about how you think inside your brain, because first of all, every thought creates a movement, right? And that movement's usually followed by an action. And even if it isn't, people are like, oh, I just think these things, but I never act on them. Well, when a person gets cornered or triggered or squeezed in some way, fear, whatever, all their thoughts come out on other people. So if you're customarily usually thinking of yourself, oh, I'm such an idiot, what a jerk I have been, I'm such a jerk, I'm such an idiot, and you're calling yourself all these names, that means that when you're stressed out, you're going to open your mouth and all that's going to spill out on the other person, and you're going to call them a jerk and an idiot. So conversely, whenever somebody calls you a jerk or an idiot, you can know for a fact that they have that kind of self-talk. Because people who don't, they don't actually call other people jerks and idiots. They're like, oh, I don't like what you're doing. But they're not going to be name calling, right? So you have to take responsibility for your thoughts. Because even if you think that people can't hear them, there is a way that they can come out and bite you in the bum or the ass.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That really the conscious and subconscious, just because you are not conscious of who you are, your subconscious is really being reflected in your actions and in your behavior. And so reality, that's one of the things that our conscious mind and I think society and our culture have tried to hide from us. Reality, our own reality, is real, and what we're conscious of is the illusion of who we think we are, and it can be tremendously different. And if we're beating ourselves up, or telling ourselves one thing when it's actually something else, that's not necessarily what other people see, but that's what we believe they see. And it's certainly one of the reasons that I think I'm here, is because I've learned that, and it is important to learn.
And your thoughts can really affect your emotions, right? You can psych yourself up. I saw my dog psyching herself out the other day. We went out, it was dark, and I moved my hand and there was a shadow, and she was like, what was that? Something moved in the grass. I'm going to hunt it. And she was psyching herself out. So then I moved my hand again and I explained to her that it's just me moving. She was like, right? But that's what we do to ourselves. Oh, this means that, and this means this, and this means that nothing is good. Thoughts will come out your mouth and then turn into actions. Don't do that.
They're related to the past, to what you associate with the shadow, or with whatever situation you encounter. So if you get stuck in the past, and you're just basically, it's a repeated pattern of of movements, of thoughts that will kick in. So to root yourself in a moment is one of the ways to to get around that.
Yeah.
And to realize that, what's going on right here, right now? Oh, actually, if I look a little left, I see that there's a hand. Oh, that makes it, okay. But, the dog had to come in the moment to realize what's going on, and not to be frightened because, there was a pattern of a reaction that was based on past experiences.
Exactly. Something dark in the shadow, danger, right?
I find it amazing that we can recognize all of these patterns in the animals that we caretake for, the people around us. But when it comes to ourselves, it's like a blind spot. It's literally like looking for your own shadow. It just moves every time you try to look at it.
Yeah, but it gives you hints, right? As you think those thoughts, you have a hint of what's going on in the subconscious. If you're calling yourself an idiot, that's like, oh, there's something off, right? Oh, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I just did that. What a stupid person. Don't talk to me, because
that means you probably have an exile and you should come see me.
Absolutely.
These are all things to work on, and obviously we've been working on them for quite a while ourselves. And it's a task that remains unfinished.
Mike has that tone like the podcast. Mike has that tone like the podcast is almost ending. I can hear it in his somber tones.
Yeah, well,
get ready to get out of this podcast. It's the time
to wrap it up pretty quickly.
But I don't want
next. It took us a little time to get into the flow of things, and now we're just zooming right along. But unfortunately, our time is limited.
Unfortunately, next week is going to be accountability, and I'm really not looking forward to it because practice was hard. I think accountability is going to be even harder. Or am I psyching myself out?
Well, I think it's
I don't know.
It's an important thing. We've definitely, it's one of those important things. It's like a fundamental thing for us and for everyone else. The more we can hold ourselves accountable, the more we can hold other people accountable, the better our society, our community, the people around us, our family, everybody gets better.
The huge potential for growth within that, right?
Raising excellence. What?
So I guess this kind of ends the topic for the week. I want to thank our audience for taking the time and giving us their attention. Greatly appreciate that. Of course, if there's anything that they saw or thought that we could do better, please feel free to suggest. We love that feedback. And, if there's anything else in that regard.
And we have a special show scheduled for the day after International Women's Day. So the week after International Women's Day, March 9th, we have our Monday show, and we're going to have a special guest. We're going to be talking about feminism, you guys. I hope you guys attend.
Okay.
Not just
So we've got that to
feminism.
look forward to.
Not just feminism. I won't allow that the whole podcast.
Well, we'll see. There is a plan. You've seen the plan. So, no, but it's going to be a really, really good discussion. It's more than feminist. It's going to be about the roles of a woman and what it is to be like a woman. And we would really, really like the guy's perspective too, because I think it's very important to have both sides. And then we can do a men's show.
Absolutely.
In another week. It's all good.
Now, do you have any face reading this weekend?
Yeah, I was just talking to Ludger. Last weekend got canceled again, but I was talking to Ludger, and I still might reschedule the one from last week. And then I had Hunter also lined up, so we'll see who it comes. I might do Ludger this weekend and try another one next week. So it's all good.
There's another example of some of those hidden messages that we don't consciously know of, but they're consciously there, and certainly people can learn from that.
Well,
with that said,
if any, hang on. If
7
any
p.m. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday.
If any of our listeners want a face reading, you can message us on Facebook, Raising Excellence on Facebook. We'll get your message, and we'll schedule you in some future week, and I can do face reading for you live on the podcast, or not. Well, a special one on the weekend anyway. So. Bye already.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for sharing your valuable time with us.
Hang on.
No more.
Bye. Bye. Bye.